They told me it would be the proudest night of my life, but instead, it became the Miss Universe controversy that changed everything. The air smelled like hairspray, nerves, and roses. Cameras blinked like constellations above the stage, and I stood there, Miss Mexico, smiling so wide my jaw trembled. They called it the smile of a queen, but only I knew it was the smile of a woman trying not to fall apart. I can still hear the echo of the host's voice that night. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Mexico. Applause exploded around me. My heart pounded like a drumline under my ribs. I waved. Elegant, composed, everything I'd trained to be. Every step, every breath, every angle rehearsed until perfection wasn't a dream. It was a demand. My mother used to say, "Anna, grace will open doors that force could never touch." So I learned to be graceful, polite, agreeable. I learned to survive by smiling. But no one tells you what happens when the smile becomes a cage. One time I met Victor Lee. He didn't say hello. He said, "You walk like you're thinking." I remember pausing, unsure if it was a compliment. He adjusted his cufflinks, his reflection crisp in the mirror, and added, "Queens don't think, Miss Martinez. They glide. They obey." I laughed softly. The kind of laugh women give when they're unsure if it's safe to disagree. That laugh became my armor. Victor was the kind of man who spoke in commands disguised as compliments. He was powerful, the director of image and communications for the entire Miss Global organization. People feared him, admired him, even loved him. But I could tell, behind that tailored suit and calm voice, there was something colder, like glass just before it shatters. During rehearsals, he circled us like a hawk. "Smile more, ladies. Chin up. Shoulders back. No, Anna, your walk is too soft. Try again." I tried again, and again, and again. Each correction felt like a thread being pulled from the fabric of who I was. But the camera loved it, or so they said. One afternoon, while adjusting my gown under the harsh fluorescent lights, I caught Mia Carter, my roommate, rolling her eyes at Victor's critique. She whispered, "He talks like we're robots on a runway." I almost laughed, but I didn't, because Victor was standing right behind us. He smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Miss Carter," he said, "robots don't complain. They just perform." Then he looked at me. "And Miss Martinez knows that, don't you?" I nodded. Of course I did. I'd spent my entire life performing, not on stages, but in classrooms, interviews, even at family dinners. The perfect daughter, the perfect representative. But lately, perfection felt heavy, like wearing a crown made of glass. Beautiful, but dangerous. That night, as we practiced the final sequence, Victor pulled me aside. "Remember," he said, "this is not about you. It's about the image. You are the message, not the voice." He straightened my sash, his fingers brushing the embroidered word Mexico. "You represent an idea, Anna. Don't ruin it by thinking too much." I wanted to ask, what if the idea is wrong? But my throat tightened. The words died before they reached my lips. When the camera started rolling again, I smiled wider. But something inside me, something small and unbroken, whispered, "Not forever." Looking back now, I realize that was the first crack in the glass. The first time I noticed the reflection wasn't mine anymore. That night, after everyone left the rehearsal hall, I stayed behind. The mirrors were still lit. I walked toward my reflection, the gown shimmering like a lie, and whispered, "Who are you performing for?" The woman in the glass didn't answer. She only smiled. And then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Victor's voice echoed from the doorway. "You shouldn't be here alone." I turned, startled. He stepped closer, his tone softer than I'd ever heard it. He said, "Pressure does strange things to people. Don't let it make you emotional." I swallowed hard. "Is that what you tell yourself?" He froze. For a second, I thought I saw something. Surprise? Pain? Humanity? Then it vanished. His jaw tightened. Go get some rest, Ms. Martinez. Tomorrow will be big. If only I had known. Tomorrow would be more than big. It would be the day the whole world saw me break the script. The day the Miss Universe 2025 scandal began. Before I tell you what happened on that stage, take a second. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. And if you believe stories about dignity and love still matter, make sure you're subscribed. This story is inspired by true events, but the characters and moments you'll hear are part of a fictional journey. Because sometimes, fiction is how we tell the truths our hearts already know. And what comes next will change everything. The morning after Victor told me to rest, I woke up before dawn, heart racing, mind already rehearsing the perfect smile. The mirror in my hotel room stared back like a judge. This is it, I thought. Final rehearsal before the live show. The world will be watching. What I didn't know was that the world would soon be watching for all the wrong reasons. The production team moved like clockwork. Everything smelled of foundation powder, metallic lights, and nerves. Victor was at the center, commanding like a director on a war set. Cue track 3, Mexico, on my mark. Walk, pause, pivot, smile. His voice echoed through the speakers, clipped and precise. I took my mark, chin lifted, steps measured, every movement trained to please him. Then something tiny went wrong. My heel caught a strand of fabric from the gowns train. I stumbled, barely noticeable, but enough. Cut, Victor barked. The whole room froze. He walked toward me slowly, his shoes tapping against the stage like a metronome of judgment. The cameras kept rolling. They always did. Every rehearsal was streamed internally for producers. But that day, someone would leak the clip. Miss Martinez, Victor said, voice cold as glass, how many times have we done this? I swallowed hard. 8 times, sir. And yet you still managed to make it look amateur. Laughter rippled somewhere in the dark. Small, nervous, cruel. He circled me, his tone slicing through the silence. You think you're special because you have a cause? Because you want to inspire girls? Let me be clear. No one cares about your message if you can't walk straight. I felt the blood drain from my face. Every instinct told me to smile, to soften it, to survive it. But my body refused. My lips trembled instead. Mia took a step forward from the sidelines. Victor, that's enough. He turned to her, eyes sharp. Stay out of this. Then back to me. Do you understand what obedience means, Miss Martinez? I managed a whisper. Yes. Then prove it. Smile. The air went heavy. I forced my mouth into the shape he wanted. It felt like swallowing glass. Victor gestured toward the camera crew. Record this. This is how emotion ruins professionalism. That was the moment. The moment the lens caught my humiliation, my shaking hands, my silent compliance, my pain dressed as grace. Within hours, someone leaked the clip online. By nightfall, it had gone viral. The caption read, Miss Universe director scolds contestant for being too emotional. And the comments, they were endless. Some called me a diva, others called him a bully. But the truth was messier than either headline. When the noise finally faded, I found myself alone, back in my hotel room, surrounded by silence and the soft hum of the city outside. The glow of my phone was the only light left. I scrolled through the chaos, each comment cutting deeper. She should have kept her mouth shut. Finally, someone puts these girls in their place. She looks weak, probably overreacting. Weak. That word echoed louder than all the rest. Mia burst into the room, her voice trembling with anger. They're eating it up. The organizers are calling it a misunderstanding, but it's everywhere, Anna. Hashtag Miss Universe scandal is trending in Thailand, Mexico, and the US. I stared at her, numb. Does Victor know? Oh, he knows. He's in crisis mode. They're calling a press conference tomorrow. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I stood and walked to the balcony. The city below sparkled like 1,000 eyes watching. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should have just smiled. Mia stepped beside me. Don't say that. But that's what everyone wants, isn't it? A woman who smiles, apologizes, and moves on? Mia's voice softened. Anna, you don't owe them silence. But silence was the only thing that had ever kept me safe. Hours later, my phone buzzed again. Julia Park, the coordinator, was calling. Her tone was professional, rehearsed. Anna, the organization needs you to release a statement tomorrow morning. We've prepared one for you. What kind of statement? It's an apology. We'll frame it as a misunderstanding, say you were emotional due to stress. You'll smile, thank Victor for his mentorship, and promise to focus on representing your country with dignity. My chest tightened. So I apologize for being humiliated? A pause. Then, Anna, please, this isn't personal. It's business. The sponsors are nervous. We just need to protect the brand. Protect the brand. I looked at my reflection in the glass door. The same reflection I'd questioned last night. The same woman who smiled to survive. That was the moment I realized they didn't want a queen. They wanted a puppet with perfect posture. And for the first time in my life, the smile refused to come. When I hung up, Mia asked quietly, "What are you going to do?" I turned to her. I don't know yet, but deep down, I did. Because something inside me, the same small, unbroken voice, whispered again, "Not this time." And somewhere in the city below, a news alert flashed on every screen. Breaking! Miss Universe Mexico refuses to comment on viral rehearsal scandal. The headlines had already written my story, but I wasn't done speaking. Tomorrow, they would try to silence me on live television. But what they didn't know was that I was done performing. The next morning, the air outside the hotel felt heavier, thick with humidity and headlines. By sunrise, the words Miss Universe viral moment were everywhere. Every TV in the lobby played the same clip on repeat. Victor's voice, my silence. Freeze frames of my face, a single tear, a trembling jaw. They called it the smile that broke. Julia Park met me outside the elevator, clipboard in hand, smile strained. "Don't look at your phone," she said softly. "We've handled most of the media." I followed her through the hall, the sound of my heels echoing like a countdown. She stopped near the conference room doors. "Remember, Anna, this isn't about blame. It's about control. Keep your voice soft, thank the organization, and move on. We'll release your prepared statement once you're done." Control. That word again. I used to think control meant discipline. Now it just meant silence. I looked out over the rows of faces, journalists, producers, photographers, all waiting to capture something they could twist into a headline. The lights were so bright I could barely see. Someone whispered, "She looks nervous." They were right. My hands were shaking. I glanced at Victor, standing to the side in his perfect suit, expression unreadable. Behind him, a digital screen displayed the Miss Global logo, blue and gold, immaculate. He gave me a subtle nod, the kind that says, "Obey." Julia placed the statement on the podium. All I had to do was read. I took a breath, opened the folder,
and stared at words that weren't mine. I would like to apologize for any misunderstanding caused by my behavior during rehearsal. I have the utmost respect for the Miss Global organization and from Mr. Victor Lee, who has been an inspiring mentor. The stress of the competition led to my emotional response. I am proud to represent my country and will continue to do so with grace and humility. Grace, humility. The two words that had kept me caged my entire life. I looked up, cameras clicked like gunfire, and for a moment, I almost did it. I almost surrendered. But then I saw something, a flash of movement near the back of the room, a man standing by the exit, camera in hand. Lucas. Even after all these years, I recognized him instantly. That quiet intensity, the way he stood like the world couldn't distract him. He didn't look like the others. No press badge, no designer clothes. Just jeans, a simple shirt, and that same calm energy that once made me feel safe. Our eyes met for a second, and everything else fell away. He didn't smile. He didn't look away either. He just held my gaze, steady and patient, like he used to when we were younger, when I'd talk about my dreams and he'd listen like they were already real. And suddenly, the words on the paper blurred. I took a step back from the microphone. A pause. The air thickened. I want to say thank you. I began, my voice softer than I intended. But not for what you think.
Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Victor shifted uncomfortably. I want to thank everyone who's been watching, I continued, for reminding me that the world doesn't always see the whole story, only the version that fits the frame. Victor's jaw clenched. Julia's face went pale. I was told to read something today, I said. Something polite, something safe. But maybe it's time I say something real instead. Gasps, flashes, the sound of 100 keyboards clicking. I wasn't emotional because I lost control. I was emotional because I finally saw what control really looks like, when people decide who you should be before you even open your mouth. Victor stepped forward. Anna. I turned toward him. For years, I believed that obedience was respect, that silence was grace. But maybe respect starts with honesty, even when it costs you everything. A stunned silence filled the room. Victor's expression flickered. Shock, then anger, then something deeper. Julia whispered urgently, Anna, stop, please. But it was too late. I looked out over the crowd one last time. Dignity isn't a crown they give you. It's what you wear when the world tries to take it away. Then I stepped away from the podium and walked through a tunnel of flashing lights, with the crowd shouting my name. Outside, the air hit my skin like freedom and fear mixed together. Mia cut up, breathless. You just set the internet on fire, she whispered. I know. What are you going to do now? I looked up at the sky, cameras still flashing from the windows above. I don't know yet, I said, but at least I said something true. That night, I sat alone by the pool. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, interviews, threats, and then one new notification from Lucas Morales. You always did have the courage everyone else pretended to have. I'm proud of you. My chest tightened. For the first time in days, I smiled. Not the kind they trained me for, a real one. I didn't know it yet, but that message would change everything. Because sometimes the apology they want becomes the truth you finally speak. And the next time I saw Lucas, he wasn't behind a camera. He was standing right in front of me.
2 weeks after the press conference, my world had gone silent. No calls from sponsors, no messages from the organization, just headlines, endless looping headlines about the Miss Universe contestant who walked off script. Some called it bravery. Most called it arrogance. But I didn't care anymore. I packed a single suitcase and left Los Angeles before dawn. The cameras didn't follow me this time. No makeup, no gown, just jeans, a sweater, and the sound of my own breathing. I traded the noise of the city for the whisper of the sea. The air was softer here, filled with salt, sunlight, and laughter from distant fishermen. Ensenada felt like an exhale after years of holding my breath. It's strange how silence can be so loud when you've lived in noise for too long. I rented a small room above a bakery that smelled like sugar and sea salt. Every morning, the scent of fresh bread pulled me out of sleep. It was the first real peace I'd felt in years. I spent my days walking along the shore, trying to remember what it felt like to be me. Not a symbol, not a scandal, just a woman with wind in her hair and sand under her feet. But peace never lasts long when your name's still trending. One morning, while I was helping the local teacher set up chairs at a small community center, a place that offered free English lessons to local girls, a familiar voice came from the doorway. "Didn't think I'd find you this far from the spotlight." I turned, and there he was, Lucas Morales. He looked almost exactly the same. A little more tired maybe, a little more real. Sunlight caught the edge of his jaw, the faint shadow of a beard. His camera hung loosely around his neck, as if it had followed him out of habit rather than duty. I froze for a heartbeat before smiling softly. "You found me." He shrugged, half smiling back. "You're not exactly invisible, Anna. Half the world's looking for you." "Then how did you find me?" He lifted his camera slightly. "I follow stories that matter." For a moment, we just stood there, the sound of the ocean filling the silence between us. I remembered the last time we'd seen each other, before Miss Mexico, before the pageants and politics, sitting in a tiny cafe in San Diego arguing about dreams. He'd said, "Fame is just noise if you lose yourself trying to hold it," and I'd laughed, calling him a romantic. Now, standing in front of him, I finally understood what he meant. He walked closer, his eyes searching mine. He said, "I saw your speech, the one they called a meltdown." I lowered my gaze. They always call truth a meltdown when it doesn't serve them. Lucas smiled faintly. "You haven't changed." I shook my head. "I think I've changed completely." He studied me for a long moment. "Maybe you just stopped pretending." That line, it hit deeper than I expected, because that's exactly what it felt like I'd peeled off a layer of gold paint to find something raw but real underneath.
We spent the rest of the afternoon helping the kids with their lessons. He photographed quietly from the corner, capturing moments, laughter, movement, light. And when the last girl left, we sat outside, watching the sunset bleed into the ocean. "I thought you hated interviews," I teased gently. He smiled. "I do, but you never needed one." I looked at him, puzzled. He gestured to the horizon. "You always told your story without words. That's why I fell for you the first time." Silence. The kind that says everything words can't. My heart fluttered. Not the nervous kind, but the kind that remembers warmth after too long in the cold. I was so focused on being perfect that I forgot how to be honest. Lucas leaned forward slightly. "Honest looks good on you." For a moment, time slowed. The sound of waves, the brush of wind, his eyes on mine. Something in the air shifted, but before either of us could speak, my phone buzzed on the table between us. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Ms. Martinez, this is Victor Lee." The world seemed to tilt. Lucas watched my expression change, his brows knitting in concern. "I'm calling out of courtesy," Victor continued. "There's an internal investigation. Sponsors are reconsidering their stance. You've made quite a mess." My throat tightened. "Is that a threat?" "Not a threat," he said smoothly. "An opportunity. The board wants to meet. They're willing to offer you a path back if you issue a proper apology. This time, privately. No theatrics." I felt Lucas's eyes on me. A path back. To what? To the same cage I'd just escaped? I swallowed hard. "I'll think about it."
"Don't think too long," Victor said. "You're not the first pretty face to fade away." Then he hung up. Lucas leaned forward. "That was him, wasn't it?" I nodded. He studied me, voice calm but firm. "So what are you gonna do?" I looked at the phone still glowing in my hand, the name Victor Lee lingering on the screen like a ghost. "I don't know," I said quietly, but the truth was already forming in my chest, fierce, steady, alive. I thought walking away had ended my story, but maybe it was just the beginning. Lucas reached over, gently placing his hand over mine, and for the first time since that night on stage, I didn't feel alone. But neither of us knew that Victor's call wasn't just business. It was a warning, because the next time we'd meet him, it wouldn't be in a boardroom.
For 3 days, I didn't answer Victor's call, but silence, I learned, can be its own kind of reply. The organization had gone quiet after my press conference. Then suddenly, the emails started coming again. Polite at first, then persistent. "We'd like to invite you for a private meeting. We value your talent and want to rebuild trust." Every message dressed manipulation as concern. I told myself I'd ignore them, but something, maybe curiosity or the need for closure, made me hesitate. Lucas didn't like it. He stood by the window of my small rented room, arms crossed, watching the storm roll in over the ocean. "You know this isn't about reconciliation," he said quietly. "It's about control." "I know, but maybe I need to face it. On my terms this time." He turned to me, eyes intense. "Anna, people like Victor don't negotiate. They calculate. You already took something from him. His image. He'll want it back." I tried to smile, but it faltered. "Then let him see that I'm not afraid," he sighed, shaking his head. "You're brave, but bravery isn't supposed to hurt this much." Next morning, the meeting was set at a luxury hotel in Mexico City, the same kind of place where everything looks expensive and nothing feels real. As I walked through the glass doors, a faint perfume of lilies and money filled the air. The receptionist greeted me like a celebrity returning to the scene of her fall. In the elevator mirror, I barely recognized myself. Hair loose, no crown, no scripted smile, just me. The doors opened to the 21st floor. Victor was waiting in a private suite, sitting by the window with a drink in his hand. He stood as I entered, that signature smile sliding into place. "Anna, you look different." "Free?" I asked. He chuckled softly. "Defiant, but that's close enough. I'll get straight to it," he said. "The board has decided to reinstate you as Miss Mexico on the condition that you record a video clarifying the situation. Nothing dramatic, just an acknowledgement that things got emotional." There it was again, that word, emotional. The polite synonym for uncontrolled, unstable, inconvenient. "What if I say no?" He leaned back, calm as ever. "Then you'll disappear. The internet will move on and you'll be replaced by someone more compliant." I took a slow breath. "You're afraid, aren't you?" He frowned slightly. "Of what?" "That the story people believe isn't yours anymore." Something flickered behind his eyes. Anger, maybe, or fear, but he recovered quickly. "I built this brand on order, on perfection. You think integrity can replace that? Maybe it's time it does." He smiled thinly. "You sound like a speechwriter, not a queen." I met his gaze. Maybe queens shouldn't have to be silent to be respected. He walked toward me, stopping just close enough for me to feel his presence, that quiet, deliberate power. "You think the world will love you for this rebellion?" he asked softly. "They won't. They'll use you. And when they're done, you'll be forgotten." I stared back, steady. "Then I will be forgotten as myself, not as your creation." He smiled again, but this time, it didn't reach his eyes. "You've changed, Anna." "No," I said quietly. "I just stopped apologizing." He turned to the table, picking up the folder. "There's a contract inside. Read it. Think carefully. If you walk out that door without signing, this chance is gone forever." I opened it. Inside were 2 pages of polished lies,
legal phrasing, confidentiality clauses, and a non-disclosure agreement disguised as an opportunity. At the bottom, my name. Above it, his signature. I looked up at him. This isn't a chance, it's a leash. He stepped closer. Careful, Anna. You're walking a fine line between courage and foolishness. I exhaled slowly. I've lived on that line my whole life. When I left the hotel, rain poured down in sheets. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't care. The contract dissolved in my hands, the ink bleeding into the storm. Walking away the first time was an accident. This time, it was a choice. I reached the street corner, drenched, shaking, and stopped under a neon sign that flickered like a heartbeat. My phone buzzed. A message from Lucas. Where are you? It's all over the news again. They're saying you rejected the deal. Are you safe? I typed back quickly. I'm fine. I just did something I can't undo. He replied instantly. Then don't regret it. Come back. I lifted my face to the storm for the first time in years. I felt clean. But as I turned to leave, a black car pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down and Victor's voice came through the rain. You just made a very dangerous mistake, Miss Martinez. I thought I'd escaped the stage, but the real performance was only beginning.
They say every story has a climax, the moment where everything burns before it begins to heal. For me, that moment started with a single headline. Miss Mexico meltdown. Organization releases new footage. I watched it in disbelief. Clips from rehearsals, edited and rearranged, showing me as the villain, rolling my eyes, walking away mid-sentence, defying direction. Even my silence had been weaponized. The video went viral within hours. Again. The Miss Universe Thailand apology was trending that same day. Victor himself standing before reporters, voice steady, words rehearsed. We regret the misunderstanding with Miss Martinez. She's a talented young woman, but the pressure of competition can lead to emotional outbursts. We wish her healing and success. Healing? As if integrity was a disease. When I finally made it back to my room, the silence wasn't silent at all. The TV flickered with that same blue light, my name scrolling beneath strangers' faces. My phone kept vibrating, each buzz another judgment, another knife made of words. The hate was relentless, ungrateful, too sensitive. She should have smiled like the others. It was as if the world had been waiting for a reason to tell me I was too much, too proud, too emotional, too alive. Even my sponsors dropped me. The brand that had once posted my picture on every billboard now issued a statement about maintaining professional partnerships. By sunset, my inbox was empty. No work, no invitations, no future. That night, I called Mia. Her voice cracked through the static. Are you okay? I wanted to say yes, but the truth caught in my throat. I don't know anymore. She was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, you know what I think? I think this is exactly what they're afraid of. You realizing you don't need their stage to shine. I tried to believe her. I did. But the loneliness was heavier than any crown. When I hung up, I turned off my phone, unplugged the television, and sat in the dark. The rain outside had stopped, but the storm inside me hadn't. The silence was so heavy I could hear my own breathing. Then a knock, small, careful, like the world asking if I was still alive. I hesitated. Another knock, firmer this time. When I opened it, there he was, Lucas, drenched from the rain, breathing hard, eyes burning with worry. Without a word, he stepped inside and pulled me into his arms. For a moment, I didn't move. Then, I broke. Every ounce of composure, every wall I'd built, crumbled against his chest. I can't keep doing this.
I whispered, voice shaking. They twisted everything. They made me into something ugly. He held me tighter. You're not ugly, Anna. You're brave. I shook my head, tears spilling freely. Brave people don't hide in the dark. He lifted my chin gently until our eyes met. Even fire hides in ashes before it burns again. His words hit me somewhere deep, the place that still believed, even when the world didn't. He sat beside me on the edge of the bed, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of our breathing, sinking slowly. Finally, I asked, "Why are you here?" He smiled faintly. "Because you'd never call me if you needed help, and I wasn't going to wait for you to drown." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. He brushed a strand of wet hair from my face, his hand lingering. "You don't have to carry this alone." I looked at him, really looked at him, the tired eyes, the kindness that hadn't dimmed. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and beautiful. He wasn't just someone from my past. He was my proof that love didn't have to come with conditions. We talked until dawn, about everything. The pageant, the lies, the fear, the weight of pretending. He listened like he always did, without trying to fix me. When the first light broke through the curtains, Lucas stood and stretched. "So, what now?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "I think I want to tell the truth, all of it, my way." He nodded slowly. "A documentary?" I smiled faintly. "Something like that. Not about revenge, about recovery, about what happens after you walk away." He studied me for a moment. "Then let me help you tell it." I frowned. "You do that?" He said softly. "I'm all ready. I've been filming since I got here." My eyes widened. He reached for his camera, turned it toward me, and whispered, "Say something. Not to them, to yourself." I began quietly. "I'm not who they said I was. I'm not a scandal, or a controversy, or a lesson in obedience. I'm a woman who learned that peace doesn't come from applause. It comes from self-respect." Lucas lowered the camera. "That's your opening line," he said with a smile. And for the first time in months, I laughed. Really laughed. The sound surprised me. Raw, alive, free. But peace, in my life, never lasted long. Later that afternoon, Lucas stepped out to grab coffee. I stayed behind, reviewing footage. That's when I saw it. An email notification flashing across the screen. From Julia Park. Subject, urgent. You're being set up. My heart stopped. I opened it. Her message was short, panicked. "Victor knows about the footage. He's sending someone to intercept your equipment. Get out of there, now." The door clicked. Open. Behind me. "Lucas?" I called. No answer. Footsteps. Heavy, slow, closer. They said walking away was brave, but they never told me that sometimes the moment you find your voice is the same moment someone tries to silence it. When Julia's message flashed across the screen, the world stopped moving. For a second, all I could hear was the rain. Soft, relentless, almost mocking. My first thought was Lucas. Where was he? I grabbed my bag, the camera, my phone, everything that mattered, and slipped out through the back door of the small apartment. The street was empty, washed in gray. Every shadow felt like a warning. I ducked into an alley and called Lucas, straight to voicemail. My voice shook. "Lucas, it's me. Don't come back to the apartment. Victor knows about the footage. Please, just call me when you get this." I hung up and kept walking until the rain turned into mist. That's when a black car turned the corner and stopped beside me. The window rolled down. Victor. He was alone. His tone was calm, too calm. "Get in, Anna. You're making this harder than it has to be." I froze. "Where's Lucas?" "He's safe, for now." Something in his voice told me not to believe him, but I also knew I couldn't outrun this forever. So I opened the door, and stepped inside. The car door closes with a heavy click. He drove through the city without speaking. Streetlights blurred past like ghosts. I watched his reflection in the window, precise, emotionless, like a man sculpted out of pride. Finally, I asked, "Why are you doing this?" He didn't look at me. "Because you humiliated me. You turned a rehearsal mistake into a morality play. You made me the villain in your fairy tale." I clenched my fists. "I didn't make you anything. You did that yourself." His jaw tightened. "You think integrity wins? The world doesn't care about truth, Anna. It cares about spectacle." I met his gaze in the mirror. "Then maybe it's time someone changed that." Brief silence, then a bitter laugh from Victor. "You sound like her." "Who?" He hesitated, just for a moment. And then, "My wife, ex-wife. She said the same thing before she left, that I used people to build the story I could control." I stared at him, the pieces falling together. "You don't want to destroy me," I said quietly. "You want to destroy the part of me that reminds you of her." He didn't answer, but the tremor in his hands on the steering wheel said everything. He stopped the car outside an abandoned production studio, the same one where we'd rehearsed weeks ago. The stage lights were off now, the place hollow and echoing with ghosts of applause. "Get out," he said. I did. He followed me inside. The air smelled like dust and old perfume. Rows of mirrors lined the walls, the same mirrors where I'd once practiced my smile. Victor's voice broke the silence. "You could have been a legend, Anna, but you wanted to be right instead of loved." I turned to face him. Maybe I finally learned that love without respect isn't love. He walked closer. "You think walking away makes you free? It makes you irrelevant." "No," I said, my voice rising. "It makes me real." He stopped a few feet away. His eyes, once calm and calculating, now looked raw, human. "I gave you everything, and you repaid me with betrayal." I shook my head. "You didn't give me anything. You took pieces of me and called it branding." The air between us felt charged, thick with something that wasn't quite anger, but wasn't peace either. The lights above flickered, sharp and white, flashing across the mirrors like distant lightning. Every breath felt loud, every heartbeat a countdown. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting to see who would break first. "Turn the camera on," I said suddenly. He frowned. "What?" "The one you use to record rehearsals. Turn it on. You want an audience, right? Let's finish this on your stage." He hesitated, then smirked. "Fine." He turned on one of the studio cameras, its red light blinking to life. I stepped into the frame. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. "You taught me to smile through humiliation, to perform obedience and call it grace. But today, I'm done performing." Victor stood behind the camera, silent. "I don't hate you," I continued. "I pity you because you've built a world so fragile that a woman's honesty feels like a threat." He slammed his hand against the table. "Enough!" But I didn't flinch. "This is what you're afraid of, isn't it? Not my voice, your reflection in it." For a moment, he looked like he might break the camera. Instead, he turned it off and sank into a chair, breathing hard. The power had shifted. For the first time, he wasn't in control.
He buried his face in his hands. "You have no idea what it's like to build something everyone depends on, to keep it perfect. One mistake and they tear it all apart." I watched him, really watched him, and felt something unexpected. Not anger, not revenge, just sorrow.
You're not protecting perfection, Victor, I said quietly. You're protecting your fear of being ordinary. He looked up, eyes glassy. You think walking away makes you better? No, I whispered. It makes me free. The silence was thick enough to touch. And then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. The door opened. Lucas stepped in, breathless, eyes scanning the room. Are you okay? I nodded, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. He looked at Victor, then back at me. Let's go. Victor didn't stop us. He just sat there, staring at the blank stage, the place where his empire began to crumble. As we walked out, Lucas squeezed my hand. You did it, he whispered. But I shook my head. No, I just told the truth. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what the cameras would see, because for the first time, they were seeing me. But the story wasn't over yet, because when the video of that confrontation leaked, the world didn't just see the scandal. They saw the woman who walked away.
It's been 6 months since that night in the studio, the night I stopped running from my reflection. Sometimes I still wake up expecting the lights, the noise, the weight of a crown that never fit. But instead, I wake to the sound of the ocean, the scent of fresh bread drifting up from the bakery below, and the quiet that used to scare me, but now feels like home. They called it the Miss Universe Walked Away scandal, but to me, it became something else entirely. A story about what happens when you choose self-respect over spectacle. After the confrontation, the footage leaked. Not from me, not from Lucas, but from someone inside the organization who'd finally had enough. The video showed everything. Victor's manipulation, his anger, his loss of control, but it also showed something else. Me, standing in the center of that empty stage, speaking without permission. The internet did what it always does. It exploded. Hashtags like Miss Universe Walked Away and Dignity and Love filled every feed. For the first time, the comments weren't mocking. They were grateful. She spoke what so many of us were taught to swallow. Walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Even the organization issued a second apology, a real one this time. Victor resigned quietly a month later, and Julia Park, the woman who warned me, became the first female creative director in the company's history. Funny, isn't it? Sometimes change doesn't come from fighting louder. It comes from refusing to play the same game. I started teaching again. Not modeling, not walking, teaching. At a little community center by the sea where girls come after school to learn English, public speaking, and how to stand tall without asking for permission. We talk about confidence, but not the kind that fits into a camera frame, the kind that comes from knowing your worth even when no one's clapping. Lucas films our lessons sometimes. He says it's part of a documentary he's calling The Woman Who Walked Away. I told him that sounds too dramatic. He laughed and said, "You literally walked off the biggest stage in the world. It's earned." We're not perfect, not together, not apart, but we're honest. And that's enough.
Sometimes, late at night, we sit by the shore, talking about what's next. He wants to show the film at festivals, to share the story of what happened after the scandal. Not the fall, but the rising. I told him, I don't care about fame anymore. He said, then you're finally ready for it. We laughed, because maybe that's the secret. Freedom comes the moment you stop chasing what was never yours to begin with. There are still days I miss the stage, the lights, the applause, the illusion that perfection could fill the emptiness I carried. But when I see the girls in my class stand in front of a mirror and say, I am enough, I realize I'm still on a stage,
just a different one. And this time, I don't need to perform. Sometimes people stop me on the street. They say, "Aren't you the one who walked away?" And I smile. Genuinely, freely. "Yes," I tell them. "That was me." But the truth is, I didn't walk away from the stage. I walked toward myself. They told me to smile, but I chose to speak. They told me to obey, but I chose to walk away. Because sometimes walking away isn't rebellion, it's how you remind the world to listen. And if I learned anything from all of this, from the humiliation, the headlines, the heartbreak, it's that respect isn't something they hand you when you win. It's something you claim when you finally stop asking for permission. So if you're watching this right now, if you've ever been told you're too much or too emotional or too different, remember this. You don't owe anyone your silence. Your voice is not a mistake. Your truth is not too loud. And sometimes walking away is how you find your way home. Well, if this story touched you, share it. Because real stories, real hearts, and real possibilities deserve to be heard. And if you believe in dignity, in love, and in second chances, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me where you're watching from. Because maybe, just maybe, your story is the next one I'll tell.